All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me today for the Intro to Screen Reader webinar. It's a pleasure to be bringing this to you, especially on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So thank you all for taking some time and joining me today. I'm Steve Sawczyn. I'm a solutions architect here with Deque. I've been blind since birth, and I've been in accessibility, I guess, technically all of my life, but professionally for 20 plus years. So I've gotten to see the evolution of technologies come a very, very long way. And so it's a really exciting time for me and for a lot of folks who are using assistive technologies and finding them to be embedded in more and more native operating systems natively and other places. So what is a screen reader and who actually uses them? The traditional thinking is that a blind person is who would use a screen reader, and that's true, but a blind person is not the only person who does use a screen reader. The first thing to understand is that a screen reader presents information that's on the screen in alternative format. It can present it in audio, which is the mode that most people are familiar with, where the computer will talk to a person. But that's not the only way it can present information. It can also output information in Braille, if you have a device called a Braille display, for example. So the idea is that it takes information on the screen and it will present it in some sort of alternative format, be that audio or Braille. People who are blind obviously use a screen reader. People who are low vision might use a screen reader as well. They may have enough vision to see what's going on, but difficulty reading larger blocks of text and such. And so they may use that to augment what they're reading. People with cognitive challenges and learning disabilities may use this as well, especially folks who find reading to be a bit challenging. They may use a screen reader to announce what they're looking at in print, for example. English as a second language learners also may use screen reading technologies to help with pronunciation, especially with some of our more complicated English words. English is not the easiest language, as I'm sure we're all aware. And I added this last group here, anyone who's using digital assistants such as Siri, Google Home, and all these other ones. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that those devices really do take information that otherwise might appear on a screen, and it's verbalizing it to you. So in a way, I think we all use screen readers to some degree, even if we do it transparently when we're asking Siri to give us tomorrow's weather forecast. So how do they enable access to digital content? Of course, they read online text aloud. They allow the user to navigate information on screen. So for example, and we're going to see this in a little bit here, they allow the user to navigate information on the screen. So if we want to jump, for example, to specific types of content on a web page or within an application, we can do that. We can perform mouse functions without using a physical mouse. So there are situations where you have to click or you have to hover to make something happen. And how do you do that if you cannot position your mouse properly? This will allow you to simulate those mouse functions and carry out those tasks. Popular screen readers for Windows. By and large, the most popular at the moment seems to be the JAWS for Windows screen reader made by Freedom Scientific. On this slide, and we'll distribute this later, there's links to the various companies that make these screen reading technologies we're about to talk about. But JAWS for Windows is a very, very popular screen reader for Windows. It is a commercial screen reader, but it's the one that many people are already aware of. NVDA, non-visual desktop access is what that stands for, is a free open source screen reader made by the NV Access Foundation. Narrator is a screen reader that's built into Windows, and it's really come a long way over the past year and a half. Major changes have been implemented in Narrator, truly making it a screen reader to be taken seriously. When we look at iOS, though, we see that there's VoiceOver. VoiceOver is available on iOS devices. You don't have to actually install it. You can enable it. It's available under the settings, general accessibility. There'll be a VoiceOver checkbox that you can enable. Before you do this, it will change your gestures a bit, so you'll want to understand what changes will happen. But the idea is that you don't have to purchase anything if you have an iOS device. The VoiceOver screen reader is already built in for you. For Android, we also only have one that I know of at the moment. And I say it that way because the screen reader that I know of is TalkBack, which is available on Android. The difference is that Android allows for others to create screen readers. So Samsung, for example, is doing a lot of work on creating its own version of TalkBack or its own screen reader for its devices. Amazon has done a lot of work with the Android-based Kindle devices, creating a screen reader called Voice View, but it's specific to the Kindle devices. So the main Android screen reader is TalkBack. TalkBack is installed, but it doesn't have to be installed by default. And so it's a screen reader that can be downloaded if it isn't available already on your Android device. What I'd like to now do is stop talking and start showing. The reason you've all come is to learn, and I'd love to get you to hear a screen reader. And so there's a couple things I want to go through with you. First, I want to show you some challenges that someone with a screen reader may face. And to be fair, I'm going to be using a test site that we've created with accessibility issues. I think that's probably a better way to go versus showing an actual website and potentially embarrassing someone. So I'll be demoing that. And then what I want to do is show a good example of booking a vacation. We're not going to go through the whole process, but booking a vacation using a site that I think has done a really good job with making their site accessible with screen readers.
Hey Steve, real quick, do you mind turning on your video?
I do not mind at all.
Perfect. Thank you. There
You
go.
are welcome. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I need to reshare it, and Zoom, as awesome as it is, does not let me toggle this. So one moment, please. Please continue to hold.
Stop.
All right, what you are now going to hear as I switch windows is my screen reader audio. I've slowed the speech way down so that it's more intelligible, but I'll give you an idea as well at roughly the speed I listen to it at, which is, again, a user preference thing. But let me switch over to that web page that I want to show you.
Task switching. Intro to screen. Spurious content. Meeting.
So here we are on a form, and I'm just going to let the screen reader read a little bit of the form so you get an idea of the page, sorry, so that you get an idea of what the screen reader sounds like.
Link Vista La Pagina en Español. Heading level 1 link spurious. Spurious Computec. Blank. List with 6 items. Link home.
How are you navigating this page,
Link
Steve?
laptops and notebooks.
So what I'm using are my arrow keys. The screen reader that I'm using is NVDA, which allows me to move through what they call a virtual buffer. In English, basically it means that I can use various keystrokes, including my arrow keys, to move around this page content. So for now, since I'm not sure what's on the page, I can simply arrow down as if it were a Word document and read the screen line by line that way.
Link desktops. Link cart. Link support. Link contact. Out of list L 703 555 12 mail info@deque.com. Button go. Edit. List with 5 items. You are here.
One of the things that we can do is move by headings, links, and see a number of other types of elements. So for example, if I want to see
Elements list dialog. Preview. Level 0 contact type. Grouping. Links radio.
I can see all the links that appear on this page. We can see here.
Headings radio.
If I want to see all the headings, I can see all the headings. And the reason we would do this is that if I want to navigate quickly between headings or between links, it saves me from having to read through the page. Think about this in the context of a page that has a massive navigation structure at the top of it, like a lot of retailers have, number of links all over it. And before you get to the content of the page, you have to read. If you were reading it all the way through, you'd have to read through 20, 30, 40 links perhaps before you get to that content area. So using these navigation commands here and using these elements, I can more quickly navigate to content areas.
Form fields radio button checked Alt plus F. Buttons radio button checked Alt plus B. Landmarks radio button checked Alt plus D. Links radio button checked Alt plus K. Headings radio.
So I have a lot of different options here that I can use to assist me in my navigation.
Spurious.
So let's try a contact us form.
Out of list. Button go. Links. Link cart. Link desktop. Link laptop. Link home. Out of list. Spurious. Heading level 1 links. Link Vista La Pagina. List
Let's
link.
go to the
Link cart. Link contact. Spurious. Tell. Edit. List with. Link home. Out of heading list with clickable messages. Out of list.
So let's fill out this messages form. We want to go ahead and send a message to this fake computer store that we've created here, right?
Edit.
So I've gone to the first form field and I want to fill it in. And what does it say but edit? Let's fill out the next field.
Edit blank.
Edit blank. The reason it's saying edit is that the developer did not add a label, a programmatically associated label to these edit fields. So when I go to fill out the form, all I hear is
edit blank. Edit blank.
And I don't know necessarily what am I supposed to put here. Is it wanting my name, my first name, last name, email?
Edit blank.
What's this one, right? So as I go through these fields, it's not reading me what each of those fields actually does.
Quick question for you, Steve. How are you navigating in between those two form fields?
So I'm moving with tab and shift tab between these two particular form fields.
Okay.
Edit multi-line blank.
And then when I get to this one,
edit multi-line blank. Edit multi-line blank.
Edit multi-line. Well, that means I can type something with multiple lines. So surely this is asking for my address, right? Because it's the only thing I could think of that would be multi-line. Or maybe it's the message that I'm actually supposed to send. So this is an example of a situation where a form is created, and because the standards were not followed correctly, a screen reader user may not know exactly what information to put in which field on the form. This actually happens quite a bit in my sort of daily travels through the web, as it were. And surprisingly, I've even seen this behavior on accessibility contact forms, meaning sites that have an accessibility policy and click here to contact us if you have an accessibility issue. Ironically, sometimes the accessibility contact forms have this issue, making the accessibility contact form inaccessible. So this is a good example of a bad use case, a bad form that a user with a screen reader may not be able to fill out.
Edit blank. Edit blank.
I'd like to show you next a good example, and this is the let's go on vacation idea that I have, because I would love to take a vacation.
Expedia track.
And we'll go to Expedia. Expedia has an accessibility team and has done a lot of work making their site very accessible. So let me walk through this and we'll see the difference in their form versus the form I just showed. And then I'll show you how we can navigate through the list of results moving by headings as we discussed earlier.
Clickable flying from edit required as autocomplete city or airport.
All right, where are we flying from, city or airport? So I'm going to type in Detroit.
10 suggestions are available for your convenience. Use the arrow keys to navigate the list.
So as I start typing, it automatically is telling me that it's got suggestions, and I can arrow to those suggestions. I'm going to arrow.
Detroit, MI, DTW, Detroit Metropolitan Wayne County.
That's good. And now?
Clear field. Flying to edit required as autocomplete. City or airport, blank.
Let's fly home. I'm from Minneapolis, so I'm going to type in
10 suggestions. Minneapolis, MN, MSP, Minneapolis, MN. Clear field, flying to, field value. Departing expanded. Enter a date or choose one from the table below. Showing May 2018, June 2018, edit, mm/dd/ai, blank. Now
it says mmddi because the screen reader doesn't know how to pronounce all four Y's together, but that's something that as a screen reader user, you just sort of learn to deal with. So I have a choice here, and it gave me instructions about entering the date numerically, or I can tab into the calendar and choose a date from the calendar here that exists. So I'm just going to type in
11.
What is tomorrow? 18th?
8.
2018.
2018. Close the date.
And
returning expanded.
Oh, I did round trip, which was silly. So let's say I'm going to come back
1
on the 21st.
2018. Close the date. Returning list with advanced options button. Add a hotel, add a hotel, add a hotel, add a car, search button.
And we're going to search.
DTW.
So we wait.
Searching for flights to MSP. Departure results now sorted by price. Lowest.
So one of the things it gave us was the status. As things are updating on the screen, it's telling me that it found them.
1,703 people are shopping for flights to MSP on Expedia right now.
And now it's telling me I better hustle because 1,000 and however many people are shopping right now at this very moment for flights to Minneapolis. So let's get to reading. There's a lot of information on this page, and we certainly don't want to read all of it, right? There's too much to read. One of the things we can do is move by headings. Headings are one of those elements that we can use as a navigation aid. So what I can do is use my H key in my particular screen reader to move heading by heading.
Clickable, change your search banner landmark, complementary main landmark, sort bar heading level 3.
We're going to keep going through all the sorting stuff.
Departure search results list with 46 items. Clickable result 1 when sorted by clickable result 2 when clickable result 1 when sorted by price $251 heading level 3.
So result 1 when sorted by price $251.
Clickable result 2 when sorted by price $251 heading level 3.
Let's say we care about this one, the second result. I can read now with my down arrow as if I'm reading a Word document.
7:50 p.m. 10:29 p.m.
That's too late. I don't want to go at 7:50 p.m. So rather than read the rest of this stuff, now that I've decided I don't want this particular flight, I can just go back to H, move to the next one.
Clickable result 3 when sorted by price $251 heading level 3.
Let's see how good this one is.
11:40 a.m. to 22 p.m.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's see the rest of that.
Graphic United logo. United. Clickable fare flight 5.3/10.
All right, doesn't look like it's a really great flight.
3 hours 42 m. One stop.
3 hours 42 m. Again, that's okay. We understand that that's meaning that they're referring to minutes there.
Clickable Wi-Fi and entertainment information.
All right.
Departure airport. DTW. Layover 59M and Ord. Arrival airport. MSP. United 4527 operated by GoJet Airlines DBA United Express.
Well, I've decided I don't want this flight after all, so let's just move to the next one.
Clickable result 4 when sorted by price $251 heading level 3.
The point that we're making here is that using the heading structure of this document, I can navigate quickly to various parts of this page that are of interest to me. So rather than reading the entire page, I have the ability to move to specific areas of interest. But this doesn't happen by itself. This took a lot of work by the Expedia team to code this properly and to add those alerts that you heard earlier so that I could have the same type of experience, good experience, that other people visiting the site would have. So I can browse the site and focus on booking my flight instead of focusing on how to accessibly access the content on this page. The next thing I want to show you is iOS. I want to show you how a screen reader VoiceOver works when we're talking about an iOS device. As it was the case before, I need to briefly stop sharing.
Meeting and mute, start, pause, share, annotate, remote, mode, move to stop.
And I will reshare in just a moment. Bear with me.
Stop share button 1919.
All right, what I'm going to be demonstrating on is an iPad.
Camera, screen hearing, button. Double tap and hold. Selected, zoom Steve. Select.
Error.
Zoom Steve.
All right, so now we're sharing my iPad.
Stop mirroring.
Albeit upside down. There we go. Now, this is the way that a touch screen works is that as I move my finger across the screen.
Messages, active.
Hold it up.
Messages, active. Swipe up with 3 fingers to close the app. Reading a news folder, productivity folder, messaging folder, 3 apps, 15 new items. Double tap to open productivity folder, 18 apps,
Let me
4 new items.
slow that down. That's awful fast, right? So the way I can slow it down is I can use 2 fingers as if I'm turning a virtual knob on my screen.
Characters, words, characters, actions. Braille screen input. 1 password. Swipe headings. Containers. Speaking rate.
And when I get to rate, I can slow it down.
70, 65%, 55%, 50%, 40, 50%.
Okay, so now we're at a much slower speed. So as I touch icons on my screen.
8 items, reading and news, shopping folder, 5 apps, finance folder, 2 apps. Double tap to open.
It's reading me what's in those, how many apps are in the folders, or how many notifications I have. And I have a lot of them. For example,
Doc, Hangouts, 2 new items. Double messages, 21 unread messages.
so I can see that I have 21 unread messages, which means that I have a lot of folks I didn't get back to. Anyway, so we have this, I can also swipe from left to right as if I'm flicking something off the screen, and that will move my focus.
Skype, 5 new item, drafts. Page 2 of 3, and Google folder, 14, finance folder, 2 app, Microsoft folder, 10 app.
So again, I'm using a device without any tactile buttons, right? This is purely a touchscreen device, and I'm using the free VoiceOver screen reader, which is embedded in the device, and it is reading me everything as I touch it. But what about typing? How do we type? Let me go ahead into Drafts, which is a great app because it allows you to type text very quickly, but the typing is standard no matter what app you're typing in.
Doc, messages, 21 unread, Skype, 5, drafts. Double tap. Drafts, text field, is editing.
Okay.
This is a test to show you how. Capital, cap L, comma. Period. Period, L, return. P.
So as I move,
I. If, predict, indent, period. I, J.
as I move my finger
Juliet.
around the keyboard,
Actions of F. Return, L. L.
it will
Return.
enter the characters as I lift my finger. So if I want to type the word test,
G. Y. Yankee, T.
T,
Ta.
E,
R. E. D.
S,
S. R. T.
T. Now, that was very slow. And part of the reason it's slow is because I'm typing with one hand on an iPad that I'm holding sort of sideways so you can view it. And I'm not the world's fastest typist on the keyboard. I use the dictation feature.
Shift. Return.
Or
Test,
I use
misspelled.
what I'm going to show you now, which is Braille screen input. So they have a special mode for folks who are Braille users who understand how to type in Braille. They have an alternative input method, again, built into iOS.
Edit. Braille screen input orientation locked, landscape, home button to the left, screen away mode,
And
contracted.
what I have here is I don't know if this is visually showing, a Braille keyboard on screen that mimics the Perkins Braille keyboard that is the common Braille writing device. So this is an alternative method, again, built into iOS, that if someone knows Braille, they can type very quickly.
This is a test using Braille. .15 screen input. I can type quickly.
So I can enter text very fast that way.
This is fun.
And so I can use this device for taking notes. So the idea is Apple really rose to the challenge of how do we take a device without any tactile markings on it, essentially a flat piece of glass, right? How do we do that and make that accessible? And what they've done is they've created with VoiceOver this idea that you can explore by touch and touch things without activating them. You have to double tap to activate. And they've made the keyboard accessible by allowing you to slide your finger across the keyboard to find a letter and then raising your finger to actually activate that letter. And then they took it another step further and said, well, what if they're Braille, they know how to write Braille, maybe then there's a way to make typing more efficient. And so they added this Braille option. All of this for the cost of nothing. It comes embedded in your iOS device.
Landscape. Home button to the right.
It's telling me home button to the right here because if I had my orientation unlocked, I may want to know if my screen flips upside down. That would be kind of helpful to know, especially if I'm typing text. So it tells me where my home button is so that I have an idea of how my screen is oriented or how it thinks my screen is oriented in case I think it's somehow different. All right, so let me again switch screen share. I apologize for the screen share switching, but again,
Empty line.
easy way to do that, and we'll continue on.
Stop share button 19 of 19.
All right. We should be sharing once again. How do you begin testing today? What's something you can do right now to begin your screen reader testing, right? One of the things you can do is try performing familiar tasks using just your keyboard. This is technically keyboard testing and not screen reader testing, but I think it's a great place to start. The way you would do this is simply go to any web page or open an application, do something you normally would do, and try using just your keyboard. Don't use your mouse, just push it off to the side. If you have a trackpad on your laptop, put a drink on top of it or something. And try using your tab key. Should move you from one link to another or one form field to another. You should be able to tab through the application. Shift tab should move you backward. Pressing enter or spacebar should activate links. If you get to a form field, of course, you can type in that field. And if you get to like radio buttons where you need to make a choice, or a drop down like a choose your birth date kind of thing, your arrow keys should allow you to drop that down. So that's something that you can do very easily. You don't need any hardware at all other than the keyboard you probably already have. And that will simulate, at least in part, the way that a screen reader user might interact with the page. Some of the things to think about is, as you tab through the page, can you see where you are? Do you have a visual focus showing you which element you're actually focused on as you press that tab key? Or is that missing? Are there functions that you can see would work with a mouse, but you can't tab to them, or you can't activate them with a keyboard, but you know that they would work with a mouse? Is there functionality that's not visible unless you have a mouse? For example, maybe a menu that flies out if you hover your mouse over it, but if you tab with the keyboard, you can't activate that menu. Those are some things to really look at as you attempt to do what you normally would do with just your keyboard. If you want to perform those same tasks using a screen reader, we do have resources available that give you the keystrokes and expected behaviors for the different screen readers that I mentioned earlier. If you're on Windows, you have Narrator already built in, or you can download the NVDA free open source screen reader, or there is the Freedom Scientific JAWS screen reader, which can be purchased, or you can download a trial of that as well. If you're on iOS, you have VoiceOver, and Android is TalkBack, but the idea is that you can use the screen reader that you already have, again, to perform those tasks that you're already performing. Before you do that, though, I would definitely look at the resources that we have available. It'll give you keyboard shortcuts and some additional information about what you can expect in terms of changes when you turn that screen reader on. Deque University has a number of introduction courses that I definitely want to mention that deal with intro to testing and also intro to using a screen reader for testing, especially helpful if you are brand new to this stuff, because using a screen reader can be a bit daunting at first. Some additional resources that I wanted to make sure we called out, and again, we will make these available afterwards, but Deque University is www.dequeuniversity.com. JAWS for Windows is at www.freedomscientific.com, one word there. NVDA is www.nvaccess.org. Microsoft's Narrator has a really long address. I would just Google Narrator or go to the Microsoft accessibility site, and there's links to Narrator from there. Ditto VoiceOver, also kind of lengthy, but if you Google VoiceOver or Apple VoiceOver, you'll find resources. Now, VoiceOver exists for iOS and also the Mac, so you'll find there's some similarities and some differences, of course, but you'll find with VoiceOver references to the Mac version of it and the iOS version of it, respectively. And then, of course, TalkBack, also a lengthy link, but a quick Google search of Google TalkBack will turn up this page that you would want, which has a lot of getting started and manuals as well. I'm going to leave this slide up here. I want to make sure we have time for questions and answers. And But we definitely would love for you to connect with us, keep the conversation going. I'm always happy to hear from people. So if there's anything you wish I had included or wish I didn't or should include next time, you know, I want to make this as useful a webinar as possible. So definitely would love any and all feedback. I'm Steve Sawczyn. My email address, I'll read out in just a moment. It's on the intro slide though. We also have contact information for DQ as well. My email address is steve.s like Sam, A-W, C like Charles, Z like zebra, Y like yellow, N like November. Yes, I'm sorry. At dq.com, DEQUE.com. And again, we'll have that information available as well after the webinar. So please do keep in touch. Please definitely keep the conversation going. I'll leave this slide up and we'll see if we have any questions.
Okay, so we do have some really great questions here. A lot of people are asking about, you know, just if you could list off some keyboard shortcuts for NVDA or JAWS. Just real quick, if you could just go over those.
Sure. So we actually have a lot that are similar. So if you're running NVDA or JAWS, the H key will move you from heading to heading. That's probably one of my favorite. I prefer navigating by headings. I'm cautiously saying that though, because this is a bit of a personal preference thing. I'm sort of old school and I just like headings and like things being structured. But there are other ways to navigate as well. So for example, if you want to move list by list, if you have items that are in a list, you can use the L key to move list by list, or I to move item by item. Adding shift before any of those will go backward. So shift H, shift L, shift I will go the other way. If you are in the screen reader, arrowing through will read your document, or will read as if it were a document. It reads the page that you're on. So you should be able to arrow through and you'll be able to read from top to bottom. Tab will move you between active elements. So tab will move you between like links, form fields. It will not read the text. If you want to read text though, you should arrow to that text. That's a very important thing. You don't want to make the text have a tab focus, because the screen reader user should arrow to that text, not tab through it. Otherwise, you'd have to have a bazillion tab stops on a page. So arrow keys for reading through a document, H for moving by heading, H for heading is convenient, L for list, I for list items, and shift all of those to go backward if you want to do that.
Okay, great. And I think some people had mentioned this in the chat, but DQ University has a quick reference guide that is available, and we'll be sure to share some shortcut information in our follow-up email as well. Are there any Linux-based screen reader recommendations that you have?
Great question. There are. So Linux there's two Linux screen readers that I'm aware of. One of them is Orca. Orca works with the GNOME desktop, and it works in a very similar fashion. I confess I don't know all of the keyboard shortcuts for Orca, but I believe they're somewhat similar to what I just described. But Orca is the open source, well, it's the Linux screen reader that can be installed. There is, if you need to have a screen reader at the kernel level, there's an older screen reader called SpeakUp, which is still around. It's a screen reader that you'd have to compile into the kernel, but you can get speech access at kernel boot. So if you need very low level access, or if you're going to be operating mainly in your command line interface, SpeakUp might be the way to go there.
Okay, great, thank you. This is a really great question. I think there's a couple of people who have asked this. What's the biggest thing or a first quick, easy steps that developers can take to make your life easier, or the lives of people who are using other assistive technologies?
I think that keyboard thing is a really good first step. Okay. For example, I was recently filling out an application and I got all the way through. It was an application for a travel credit card, and so it had like multiple parts, and I got through all 8 parts. I was on the last page, and there's a checkbox that says by checking this, I agree to the digital stuff that I probably should read and didn't, and you have to check the box before you can submit the application, right? That checkbox was not accessible. You can't tab to it with a keyboard. You can't activate it with a screen reader. The developer did some sort of custom magic to make I'm sure, a very pretty looking checkbox that is totally inaccessible. And so the problem is that I had gone through all 8 steps up to that point to get to the checkbox and couldn't finish. I tried to get someone to assist me with it, but the problem is then I timed out because I only had a few minutes to submit my application before it, reset everything, which it promptly did. So I had to go back through all 8 pages again, and I eventually got it done. But if the developer had taken just a few moments to tab through and see if their application would have worked with the keyboard, they probably would have found that checkbox. The other thing I should mention is that there are a number of tools available for testing. Deque has an open source tool called AXE, A-X-E, the accessibility engine. Quick search will find that, or axe-core.org will take you to it. These tools are come in a number of formats, but the popular way is a browser plugin that you would install. It shows up in your developer tools, and if you run that, it will highlight for you or identify for you a number of code level issues that I'll stop that. It'll highlight for you identify a number of issues that you can fix at the code level. And the AXE tool also gives you guidance on remediation. So for example, on that form that had all those missing labels on it, the bad contact form or the bad messaging form, it would highlight the form fields and indicate that those need to have a programmatically associated label. And it would also provide links so that the developer could get more information. AXE is free, so there's no reason not to have it. It's free, it's open source, so the community is contributing to it. It's not just a Deque thing. It's integrated into Google Lighthouse and other places as well. So it's a resource that I think developers can use and really get a jump start on identifying issues that can be problematic later.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's a really good one: is how does your screen reader interact with things like spreadsheets or Excel or Google Sheets? Are there any quick tips you would give people to help them make those accessible?
Great question. So spreadsheets are actually pretty easy. What happens is as you move between the rows and columns, it will read you the coordinates, A1, B3, F15, whatever, right? So it reads that, and it will also read the contents of the cell. Now, of course, if you have a spreadsheet that's a bazillion columns wide, it gets really confusing to remember that column Q is daily total and column X is weekly total or whatever it is, right? So one of the things you can do as a screen reader user is you can instruct your screen reader to read the column headings. You can say, this is the row, like A1, this is the row with my column headings on it, whatever that row is, and you can say, read this row. So when I move to a new cell, don't just say B15, say B15 and the column heading as well, so that you remember which column you're in. The nice thing about that is the screen reader, or the spreadsheet creator doesn't have to do anything. This is a screen reader specific thing that can be done both with Google Sheets and with Excel. And so the creator doesn't have to do anything to create that accessibility. The screen reader user can.
Okay. So here's a really good question. Someone asked, they are a web developer, and they've heard 2 passionate screen reader users tell them that alt text should say one thing. One JAWS user who was blind from birth said that she preferred simple, content-focused, functional alt text, while the other user who was born sighted said that he preferred a more detailed description of images, including color and other visual information. Where do you come down on that question?
You're absolutely right. It's going to come down to personal preference, and it's really no different to someone who's blind than it is to someone who is sighted. If someone is sighted looking at the picture and they tend to like pictures, they're going to pay attention to the detail of the picture, maybe notice the lighting in the picture, notice things. If other people are focused on maybe accomplishing a specific task or something, they're just going to overlook the picture and not pay attention to it at all, right? So different strokes for different folks. I think the person who lost their vision later on might really miss or want to have more information about the colors and the background and things that visually they would have picked out, and they probably enjoyed looking at pictures before they lost their vision. And so that's something that is very meaningful to them. That's something that they would connect with. Someone who's blind from birth, and I realize I'm generalizing here quite a bit, so no hate mail, please, but people who might have been blind from birth, including myself, may not care as much about that level of detail. I don't care what color something is necessarily in a photo, because the color has no connection for me. I don't know what that means anyway, so I would just assume not have it. So where do you come down on it? I think it's a matter of striking a balance between the two, and recognizing that you want to make sure that you are presenting in your alt attribute a good, unbiased description of the image. For example, I was once browsing a tourism site, and it had a picture of someone on a beach. And I'm sure that the point of this photo is to show this beautiful beach with the ocean and a sunset and make you think, oh my God, this is somewhere I totally want to visit, right? The alt attribute, though, said, woman standing on a beach in a really ugly dress. And so, you know, obviously that was someone's opinion. I don't think the woman's dress was really the focus of that, but it was for this person. That's what you want to avoid, is interpreting the image. You want to be descriptive without being interpretive of what that image is. So try to strike a balance. I think, you know, if the image is really supporting something else, then really focusing on the details of the image that provide that support. You know, kids sitting at a picnic table on a grassy field, if you are doing a product placement thing for a picnic table, might be great. You know, if you're doing an art gallery, though, and you have a picture of a painting or a poster of some sort, then you may want to do, you know, go into more detail about that image, because the detail is really what you're emphasizing of that image. Or if you're selling something like an automobile, for example, picture of a car is not going to be very descriptive, right? So since you're trying to sell the thing, you might want to be more descriptive of, you know, of the actual vehicle or something that would stand out visually, because that's what you're actually trying to highlight.
Great, thank you. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. Some people have noticed differences in the way that JAWS reads a page versus something like NVDA. Do you know if certain readers are optimized for specific software or applications? You know, is there one thing that works better than others?
Yes. So I'm often asked, like, what is the best screen reader? And that question has no answer at all, really. Okay. It really depends. But there are things that tend to work better with different screen reader or screen reader browser combinations. So for example, NVDA and Firefox work really well. And this isn't to say that JAWS and Firefox don't work well. They do also work very, very well. NVDA, JAWS and IE work very well. Narrator and Edge work very well. Now, when I said that they work very well, the thing I don't want to leave you with is an idea that the others don't work at all with that combination, because that's not true. Edge, for example, does work with NVDA. It may work a little bit better with Narrator, but it depends what you're doing in Edge. There might be use cases that work a little bit better that most users never encounter, right? Maybe with more complex applications, for example, they may notice a difference, but if you're just browsing the web, it may not matter at all. So the other thing to mention is that JAWS there has a scripting language, and people can write scripts to make JAWS work better with certain applications. JAWS writes a number of their own scripts and provides them with the product, but people can write scripts as well. The danger in this is that it only works for JAWS, right? JAWS, the scripting language, is specific for JAWS, but the advantage is they've written some fantastic scripts to make JAWS work very well with common applications like Microsoft Office, for example, right? Where NVDA works pretty good and is improving all the time, but JAWS, because of its scripting capabilities, works, I think, better, because they've taken areas of Microsoft Office that have been problematic, and using their scripting language, they've made it more accessible than otherwise could be done. So that's why I think you do have some discrepancies in these things. Sometimes there's levels of browsers support between the browser and the screen reader that may or may not be there. And then you have other things like JAWS scripting capabilities that might enhance its ability in certain situations.
Here's just a quick question that I think is interesting, is how do you browse maps as a non-sighted person? Would you, for example, rather be presented with a list of restaurants with a distance on how to get and directions on how to get to them and ratings rather than a map presented with pins? What navigation systems do you like to use, etc.?
This is, again, another tricky one because it depends who you talk to. So for me, I would love a list. I like lists. I'm good at lists. Lists are neat and they're vertical and I can follow them. However, I will say that what you lose with a list is the whole map, right? You lose the idea that this restaurant is really right across the street from this hotel, or if I go down 2 blocks this other way, you know, this will take me here, right? There's the whole visualization piece that you get with a map. On iOS, maps have actually been made accessible. They're a little bit tricky because you have to zoom in quite a bit, but you can actually follow a map using your finger. You can explore by touch and follow a map, and it will provide audio feedback to tell you that you're following a path or a street, or you've wandered off the street, you know, so that you have an idea of how things are laid out on the map. And so if you zoom, you have to zoom in pretty far, but you can actually get a good understanding of the relationship between pins on the map. So again, it's one of those things I've always thought, geez, mapping is going to be a huge challenge, and everyone does GPS and everyone does their maps. And reality is Apple has made it pretty accessible to the point that you can even use like transit programs and pull up you know, map data from a transit stop and figure out, you know, where the next bus stop is, for example, or where that train platform is in relation to where you are, kind of thing. So they've made it something that's fully accessible. So I think in part user preference, in part it's the question of which, you know, if they're using a touch screen or not, it may make a big difference, right? Mm-hmm. Those would be probably the main questions to ask.
Another quick question here for you is, are advertisements obtrusive to a screen reader user? And that could be something like a pop-up or maybe some like hidden ads embedded on a page. How do you view those when you're looking at a web page?
I think, you know, this is a difficult question. The answer is they can be, and if they take away my focus, then they're disruptive. If they interrupt what I'm currently reading, that's disruptive. Mm-hmm. But if they're done in a way, and there are ways to do this, where the ad will read, for example, when I'm not reading something else at the moment. So if it doesn't interrupt my sentence, that if the screen reader is currently reading, you know, your booking is confirmed, your departure date is buy 2 for the price of 1, right? I don't want it to interrupt that sentence, for example. But if it wants to read the ad after that sentence is done, I think it's fine. Now there's a thing here where when we talk about accessible experiences, right, what we're really looking to do is create an equivalent experience, an equal experience. So we don't want to not read ads because, frankly, the ads are what fund a lot of things, right? And just as folks who can see should get these ads and have to deal with them, a screen reader user shouldn't be exempt from that, as long as the ad doesn't stop them from doing something. So pop-up might be challenging if, for example, the screen reader user doesn't know the pop-up happened, that the pop-up actually occurred. So there's a lot of possibility there with ads. They can be done accessibly, and they can be done in a way that doesn't frustrate the user, dare I say, beyond what may frustrate every user, you know, such as frequency of ads.
Okay. Let's see, we got another really great question here, which could be related back to your time in university. Do you have any recommendations for displaying STEM content, like math equations? I don't know if math was your forte, but how do you, you know, how does a screen reader read that kind of content?
So math has come a long way. I could date myself here a bit, but back when I did math, they didn't have this technology that these kids have today. And so it was a really rough process for me. I actually had moved away from STEM because it was just too big of a challenge, and I didn't want to take that on. It's doable. I know of people who have done it, but it just seemed like such an overwhelming thing to deal with. And I said, no, there's just easier ways to be frustrated, and it's a shame because I don't know how far I would have gone with that, right? Who knows what would have happened. Fast forwarding to today, though, we have a lot of technology, and there is a language called MathML, which is a mathematical markup language that now enables assistive technologies to walk someone through, for example, a math equation. And these are things we couldn't have done back when I was going through this. But now it's possible to present mathematical and scientific content in a way that a screen reader can interpret it, read it correctly, and also allow the user to move between various portions of it. So think, very large equation, right? Using MathML, the student can actually move to specific parts of the equation, kind of like I did the web page, but in a more math/equation specific way. So I think the key there is to really understand MathML and understand what supporting technologies exist today. There are quite a few, and those are constantly evolving, and recognizing that it is totally doable and that a student today doesn't have the same challenges that I did, because if done correctly, they can access their math or their science stuff without much difficulty.
Okay, good to know. We have a fun request. Someone, I know for the audience purposes, we slowed down the speed of your screen reader, but there are some people who are curious to hear what it sounds like at full speed. Do you want to give that a try real quick?
We can totally do that. Just one moment here while I
switch that up a little bit.
Switch gears.
And while Steve is switching gears, I just wanted to throw out that we only have about 5 minutes left in this webinar. I know there are a lot of questions that we haven't gotten to, but we will be doing a follow-up session just for questions, and we'll announce the date and the details of that. So, please stay tuned. We want to make sure that everybody's questions are answered and that this is as informative as possible for folks. So keep an eye out for that. And I think we had also mentioned in the chat that we are going to be sharing this recording as well as slides and other resources. So that's a good way for people to share those with folks who might find this webinar interesting and informative.
So this is the speed at which I hear my screen reader. Let's push share screen, that'll work.
Stop share button 19 text switching window, application list, PowerPoint slideshow window, DTWMST560 roll call. DTWMST560 roll call. Video, DTWMST560 document. How to list content info landmark under refresh search. Scatter landmark, refresh search for the latest prices. Heading level 2. Flight prices change frequently due to availability and demand. Want to make sure you always see the best prices guaranteed.
All right.
Content info landmark under refresh search.
It wants me to refresh my search, but it's reading this prices change frequently.
The best flight prices change frequently due to availability and demand.
Availability and demand. So that's roughly the speed at which I listen to it.
The best prices guaranteed. Content info landmark
How
under refresh
long did it take you to get used to that level of speed?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, we're not super listeners or super hearing or have any sort of superpower. This comes about from a lifetime of listening to screen readers and speech that sounded far yuckier than what you're hearing today, right? No one starts out like listening at this speed. What happened was I started at the speed that I played earlier, and then over time I would just bring it up a little bit. Every month or two I would go up another notch. Back then, you had like 10 possibilities of speed. Now you can go in increments of, 1. So it's, you build up over time, and it's the type of thing that if you're new to screen reading, it's okay to listen slowly. It's not a race, right? Over time, you build up that speed, you build up that ability to understand, to be able to listen to the screen reader and to something else going on in a room. These are things that are real challenges for folks who are new to this. But for people that have done it for years and years and years, it sort of becomes second nature. But you have to give yourself time to be able to do that, and recognize that when people start out with this, that doesn't happen overnight, and it's okay, because it's a very different method to access.
And what speed are you at? Just curious.
NVDA says I'm at
65,
70.
Okay.
I don't know what that means. I think that means 70% of something. Let's just, for the heck of it, go all the way up to full speed.
75, 85,
I can't understand it at this speed, but you know, there's probably people out there who can. So yeah, it's that same content that I just read at 100%. So that's really speedy. The nice thing is I know if I work hard, I can get up to that speed. I haven't increased my speed in quite some time. I'm happy at the 70.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, there is the potential there, and you know, probably as people use these things more, that'll become the norm. The faster, the better. You know, we're constantly consuming information.
One last question here. We got a couple minutes left. I know we touched on Excel formatting, but do you find PowerPoint to be easy to navigate and read, even when they are made accessible? And what suggestions do you have for people to make them better for screen readers?
PowerPoint works really, really well. I think the screen reader user has to be familiar with PowerPoint, and that's the thing you can't really solve for, right? Is how familiar the user is with the tool. So if you make the most awesome PowerPoint in all the world,
right,
and the user doesn't know how to use PowerPoint, there's nothing you can do about that, and that's really important to recognize. Same thing with the browser. You could make the most accessible application in the world, and the person who doesn't know how to use their browser properly is not going to know how to use it. It's not an accessibility problem, it's a usability problem. But with regard to PowerPoint, you can use it very well in presentation mode and also in slide view mode, or whatever they call that.
Read 40.
For example,
task switching window, running applications list, DTW to MS, meeting controls, row 1, PowerPoint slideshows.
One of the things that's nice is I can review the information on the slide just by using my arrow keys.
Deque Systems Inc. Deque Systems Inc. Deque Systems. Thank you. Connect with us. Thank you. Connect. Deque Labs. But Deque Systems. Picture YouTube logo. Picture LinkedIn logo. Picture GitHub logo.
So I'm reading backward. So what we've done here is we've provided alternative text for all of the images in the PowerPoint. That's a very useful thing to do. So if you have logos, if you have, you know, a headshot, if you have whatever it is, you know, put a descriptive thing in there so that someone who encounters that will know what that is. Use text wherever possible. Text is easy to read, but for the most part, there's a lot of accessibility baked into PowerPoint already, so it actually works really well. Same with Google Slides.
Okay, great, thank you. That was a really good answer. We are at the end of our time. Thank you to all who joined us today. Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day.